Alright guys, not only tonight are we making dessert, we are doing our first ever dessert version of Better Than the Box. And what better way to do it than to go all out? There's a single item in a variety of flavors that connect Hostess, Bluebird, JJ, and Little Debbie all together, and that is the fried pie, commonly known as the hand pie. We're not just making one flavor, we are making 3 iconic flavors and one that is specifically a shot at JJs Pies. Alright, so tonight we're going to be making apple fried pies, chocolate fried pies, 2 of the OGs now, and then specifically to call out JJ's, y'all don't notice, and a Boston cream ham pie. We're doing everything from scratch. This is the biggest dessert venture yet on this channel, and I can't wait to share it with you. We're going to be making our pie crusts completely from scratch in all of our fillings, including the glaze at the end. This is a big task, so I need to cut out the talking. Let's get to prep. Alright, so what I have in this bowl here is 4.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and we're going to be adding to that 2 teaspoons of table salt or fine sea salt, 2 teaspoons of granulated sugar, and we're going to get that all nice and mixed together with a fork. Normally I would use a whisk for this amount of dry ingredient, but we're going to need to save our whisks for our chocolate pudding and custard cream fillings. Guys, this is a lot of pie crust ingredients. This is going to yield 12 pies. Now, if you don't need 12 pies, say you want 6, you can cut this recipe in half and it will work out just fine. Want less than that, then just do the math. Now that all of this is mixed up and ready to go, let's go ahead and take this to the food processor. Alright, so what we're going to do now is add all that nice seasoned flour to our food processor. Now guys, you could totally make this by hand if you want, but for this amount of pie crust ingredients, that's going to be torture. And the food processor is going to get it done quicker and probably better. Alright, and to that we're going to add in 6 tablespoons of lard. Now this pie crust is totally different than any other dough I've ever made. There's a lot of fat in it. It's going to get equal parts of lard and butter, and that's going to give it a nice flaky and crispy exterior. And then after we get that all nice and set in, we're going to put in 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter, cold unsalted butter that's been cubed up in little pieces. We're going to start pulsing this on the dough setting for maybe about 30-45 seconds. We're looking for the exact same results as we do when we're making biscuit dough. If you guys have not seen how I make buttermilk biscuits, I'll leave a link in the description and a card floating around. So of course we want this fat, all this lard and butter, to be pea-sized chunks inside of our dough. And after about 30 seconds, I didn't quite get that. There's still some nice large chunks of fat hanging out at the middle and bottom of this cup. So I'm going to go ahead and pulse this on high for another 15 seconds. And after that was done, we have the results we're looking for. A nice, moist, sandy dough with pellet-sized, pea-sized chunks of fat cut into it. And guys, if you can take your hand into the dough and squish it together and form like a nice, moist, sandy texture, that's how you know you're ready for the next step. And so we're going to go ahead and continue pulsing this on a high speed. And to it, we're going to be adding 1 cup and 2 tablespoons of cold water. And we're going to continue pulsing that until we have a nice, shaggy dough formed, which is kind of what you see right here. So now we're going to dump all this dough out onto a lightly floured work surface, and we're going to go ahead and start laminating it, doing some quick slap and folds. I'm going to try to do this with the bench scraper, but it's not quite working out. There is just simply too much dough on this board, and it's way too crumbly and sticky, so I'm going to have to go in with my hands. And then we're just going to at least slap and fold each side of this dough for about 4 or 5 times, just enough for it to build some strength and structure. And after we've gotten that laminated about 5 times, we're going to go ahead and form and roll this into a nice ball like we have here. And now we're going to take a tip back from our cinnamon roll making days, and we're just going to go typewriter style and roll out this log about as evenly as we can. And once we have a nice, mostly even log of dough, we're going to go ahead and start cutting out some discs. Now this step is very crucial. You're going to need to weigh your pie discs. If your pie discs are too dense, then whenever we start rolling them out to make pies, they're not going to cook thoroughly and you're going to have a raw inside, and vice versa if you roll everything out too thin. It's just going to fall apart inside of the fryer or pot of oil, whatever you have. So we're going to pull out this kitchen scale, and you want each disc of dough to weigh about 3 ounces and no more. All right, and I'm just going to kind of roughly shape these dough discs into somewhat of a circular fashion. This is my first time doing it, so I kind of had to eyeball it and then add some extra dough or take dough away as I needed to get about to that 3-ounce mark. And once we've gotten about 12 nice 3-ounce pastry discs, we're going to go ahead and get some parchment paper squares, and we're going to try to roll this out into about 3-inch wide mini discs. Now guys, mine didn't turn out into even circles. You do want even circles. But I can fix this later on and I'll show you how to do that. Now that we've got 12 nice, roughly 3-inch wide pastry discs, we're going to go ahead and either wrap these into some plastic wrap, but I'm terrible at wrapping stuff and I don't want to tear my dough discs. So I'm going to put it into a nice airtight container and refrigerate this for 30 minutes. This is something you must do. And now that we got that taken care of, we're going to go ahead and start working on our chocolate pudding. And for our pudding, in this saucepan is 1/4 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder and 2/3 of a cup of regular granulated sugar. And to that, we're going to be adding 3 tablespoons, yes, tablespoons of cornstarch and a 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. And we're going to go ahead and start mixing this thoroughly. And at the end of all this, you want to see a nice uniform sandy chocolate style powder, something that looks a lot like this. And if you've already guessed, yes, the cornstarch is our primary thickening agent for this pudding. With that being said, let's go ahead to the stove and make things happen. All right, so now that we got our pot on the stove, let's go ahead and start turning this on to a medium-high heat. And then now we're going to start adding in slowly 2.5 cups of milk. Now, the type of milk really doesn't matter. Of course, I always use 2%. Use whatever you want. And we're going to go ahead and start incorporating this slowly, making sure we work everything off the sides of the pot and off the bottom. And guys, you could really save time on this if you want to use a prepackaged boxed pudding. But if you came to expect that from this channel, you're absolutely wrong. We're going to do this all from scratch because we're out to beat these name brands. And we're not doing this halfway either. All right, and now that we've gotten all of our milk incorporated, we're going to continue whisking this until we reach a boil. A couple minutes in, you're going to see me grab a spoon. And this is a great tip for making from scratch puddings. I'm just going to get down to the bottom of the pot and scrape up anything that might be living at the bottom. Even though the whisk is a great tool for stuff like this, it doesn't always get those big clumps broken up. And as you can see, I brought up just like a couple of chunks of chocolate paste. And now that I've got them into the mix, it's being fairly well incorporated. And I will see you all at the boil. All right, it's been about close to 10 to 12 minutes in, and as you can see, that the consistency of our pudding mix has definitely changed, and it's definitely getting a lot thicker. And as you can see, we're at a slow boil. Now, this next step is absolutely critical. For the next 10 minutes, if your arms weren't already tired enough, you've got to beat this thing like it owes you money. And you cannot stop stirring at this point while maintaining a boil. We're also going to go ahead and reduce the heat down to medium to prevent burning. It is absolutely critical to keep the boil going and this pudding moving. This is where the actual thickness happens. And we're going to need to maintain this vigorous stirring and whisking while over that medium heat for literally 10 minutes. All right, now after 10 minutes has elapsed and my whole arm is aching and about to fall off, all we're going to do is slightly increase the temperature back to that medium high and bring it back to a boil. And that happens in probably less than 2 minutes, as you can see here. Once it has reached a boil again, we're taking this bad boy directly off the heat and hitting it up with 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And we're going to let that in. And that's also going to help thicken and add richness to our pudding. And last but not least, a teaspoon of real vanilla extract. Please, guys, no fake stuff. All right, now that everything is melted in and combined, what we're going to do now is take our pudding and put it into a nice sized container and seal it up with plastic wrap and put this in the fridge to set. And before we can discuss any of our other pie fillings, the 30-minute timer on our pastry discs are up. So now it's time to take these guys to the next level, and all I'm doing here is trying to expand them while turning each corner. You must turn the corners to get even rolls. And we're trying to stretch this out to about an 8-inch wide sort of disc shape like this. Now, if mine don't turn out to be exactly circle-ish looking shapes, I'm going to expand them to where they look somewhat kind of like an unfolded hand pie. And you don't want these getting any thinner than about 1/4 inch. Otherwise, they're going to break apart in the fryer. And you also can see me at times folding these over after I'm done rolling them, making sure that they're the right shape and size to hold the fillings in. They may not be perfect now, but when it's time to start filling them, this will work out. Promise you. See what I'm doing there? That's me trying to figure out the size of the finished product and making sure I make the dough stretch. And we want to continue this process until all 12 of our pastry discs are nice sized sheets ready for filling. All right, so all of our nice little pie crusts have been rolled out, and these need to go in the fridge for about another 30 minutes. Now these are probably going to end up taking a little bit longer than that because we have 2 more fillings to prepare. So, if you guys' hands are tired from the pudding, well, it sucks to be y'all because we're doing Boston cream next. Now, guys, I'm not going to cover it in this video because we covered it before in my Boston cream donut video. So, if you haven't checked that out, there'll be a link in the description and a card floating around, and I will see you guys again when it's time to get the apple filling done. 20 minutes of excessive hand cramps later, and we're at our apple filling. These are 3 Granny Smith apples that I have peeled, and today we're using a new product in the kitchen. This is a Damascus steel chef's knife from Time and Table that's 11 bucks. Got it at Walmart. It's been forever since I've done anything for myself, so this might be a treat. Let's see if it's worth the hype. All the internet chefs are using Damascus steel, and so am I now. And this thing cuts like there is nothing to these apples. It is falling off the core like I do not believe. Look at that look. I am super impressed with this. Guys, you don't have to spend in excess of 70 to 80, 100 bucks for a Damascus steel knife. This goes through it, and I'm not even really feeling the apples at this point. Now, Damascus flex aside, it's time to chop these apples up into some nice sized pieces like you see here. I like them a little chunkier for hand pies. You get your preference. This is totally up to you, but I want a little bit of texture whenever I bite into the apple hand pie. So this is perfect for me. So now it's time to start seasoning our apples. Now that these are all done, we're going to toss them into a nice sized bowl and hit them up instantly with a teaspoon of kosher salt, a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. Light brown sugar is what I'm using. Any will work. 1 tablespoon of ground cinnamon and a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And guys, this is going to have a little more of those traditional apple pie notes. I'm going to get that incredibly well combined. And I'm going to let this sit for a few minutes to let it draw out some of the juices. This is going to help make a delicious sort of apple caramel in the pan. And also, while this is sitting, I'm going to do some dishes because I have mountains in both sinks. And I may or may not still be dealing with that at the time of this voiceover. Sometimes I really hate myself for being an overachiever. And I wonder why I do it, but it's for you guys. And because I want to. And I'll see you guys again when it's time to hit the stove. And at this point, I am totally washed up and tired and forgot to hit the record when I first started cooking these apples. So the only thing that's happened at this point is I have melted off 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter in this skillet. The only other thing I did to these apples is add 2 teaspoons of cornstarch to help thicken up some of that juice. As you can see here, it's forming a nice thick sauce. We're not going to cook these apples too long. We're going to check them at around 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes is up, and this is what our fragrant and beautiful apples look like. And the only thing we're going to do here is add in 1 teaspoon of real vanilla, and we want to get that incorporated in. We're not going to cook it much longer after this. I'm just looking to make sure that it is fully incorporated. And if you haven't already noticed, I've already pulled out my pie crusts. I brought these out when I first started cooking the apples to make sure that they warmed up properly before they hit the fryer, to make sure that they cook properly and evenly. And now that we've gotten all of our nice ingredients and our vanilla mixed in, and these apples are looking and smelling beautiful, it's time for the taste test. And if you can't tell by my face, they are perfect. Now it's time to start filling our pies. As soon as the apples came off the stove, I started heating up that nice pot of clean oil, and that's what our beautiful chocolate pudding looks like. And oh my Jesus, is it amazing. All right, the reason why we're going in with chocolate first is because it's had the longest time to set. So that means it'll make a more successful pie, and we're going to give these other fillings a little more time to come together. So what we're going to do is take 1 sheet of this beautiful pastry dough, and all I'm doing here is just trying to reshape and form the rough corners that aren't exactly uniform into a better looking circle. And now Before we add our pudding in, which I did forget the first step as you're seeing me add the pudding in first. The first actual step is to take your baster, dip it into some water, and do a quick outline of the entire perimeter surrounding your pie. This is going to form a seal. It's like the same thing as licking a stamp, basically. And here you see me doing that. There's enough fat and sugar in the dough to stick. It just needs a little moisture to stay sealed. And when it comes to your pudding filling, guys, you need to be judicious. Try to make one of those large spoons that you saw me use at least cover about half to 2/3 of the inside of your pie. Overfilling your pie will cause it to erupt while it's in the fryer, and that's going to mess everything up and be just not ideal. So don't do that. What you see me doing here is rolling the dough over to make the pie shape. Don't worry if your edges are uneven, they'll be corrected later. Now I'm taking a fork and making those classic tine marks all across the top of the pie. This is, pretty much symbolic of a normal pie. And now I'm taking a pizza cutter and I'm just going to clip off the uneven or dirty edges and making it one uniform pie. Guys, make sure you give yourself enough room to not cut into the top of your pie with the filling. You want something that looks like that. It did end up throwing away one of my chocolate pies because I actually cut into the top of the pie and could not repair it. Just do the outer edges of your crimped pie, just to make sure it looks pretty, it's even, and it stays sealed. Now we're moving on to our Boston cream pies. The technique, guys, is going to be the same as you saw on the last pie. The only difference is how we're going to manage our filling. So I'm going in first with that nice, beautiful custard cream. Less is more in this situation as you see me thinning out and spreading this custard, because if we put the same amounts of each filling in, this thing is going to erupt in the fryer. And again, you see me forgetting the actual first step. Again, I do this quite a lot. I don't know why I don't remember to do this first. Anyhow, after I'm done doing that, I'm going to ladle on yet again another simple small layer of that chocolate pudding. And then we're going to fold it up, crimp it, and cut it the same way. And once I was done with all of these Boston cream pies, the oil was ripping hot and ready to roll. So now it's time to fry them. And guys, I'm not going to really cover sealing up the apple pies because it is literally the same concept with a different filling. You guys got this. So let's go to the fryer. In a nice pot of oil or deep fryer preheated to 360 degrees, we're going to go ahead and drop in our fully formed hand pies. Now, what you're seeing me struggle with here is there was a lot of excess moisture on the cutting board from basting the insides with that water, and it's causing it to stick to my spider here. So I ended up eventually using an icing spreader to lift off the fried pie into the oil. And it looks like the oil started to get a little too hot, so I pulled it off the heat for a little bit. Eventually, what I did was I started just dropping these pies in by hand slowly away from me. Now, the cooking on this is a little tricky as there is no set time to cook each side. It's kind of like how we cooked our honey buns in that dessert video. As soon as the top side that you're looking at is a nice deep golden brown, it is time to turn that sucker over and let the bottom side cook until golden brown. And once you have golden brown results on both sides, it's time to extract these guys and put them on a paper towel lined tray to drain. And we're going to cook all of our pies in exactly the same manner. So I will see you guys at the glaze. Keep in mind that these pies are going to need to cool down for a minimum of 10 minutes. All right, it's been 10 minutes and these things are looking and smelling amazing, and I kind of want to eat one right now, but we've got to do the glaze. It's necessary. In this bowl is about 1.5 cups of powdered sugar mixed with about 1/4 cup of water, a teaspoon of vanilla, and a teaspoon of kosher salt. And we're going to very slowly glaze these, starting out with a light covering being poured over by a 1-cup measuring cup. And after we've gotten all of our nice pies with the first layer of glaze, we're going to spread it out with an icing spreader. Now, even though all of your commercial brand fried pies say that they are lightly glazed, they are glazed on top and bottom. So we're going in with another round, making sure that all the icing leaks down up underneath these, which is why I don't have them on a cooling rack. We want that double crust on both sides. So now that all of these are completed and in their final form and looking marvelous, we're going to let them cool for about 15 minutes, and then we are going to try these things, and I couldn't be more excited. All right, so roughly 3 hours later, and sometimes I really do hate myself for being such an overachiever, but I really wanted to do this. And I did it for a reason. And I also did it for you guys, so hopefully it's worth it. Now, guys, you don't have to make all 3 of these if you don't want to. You don't have to make any of them if you don't want to. But if you're feeling frisky, try any one of these. They're really, once you get the hang of the basic idea, they're really not that hard to make. But now it's time for the real deal. This is what we've been waiting for. This is the taste test. All right, so this is our chocolate pie. And there's a cat. I knew from the get that this pudding was very good. And honestly, I ate more than my fair share while these were cooking, and no regrets. This is good standalone. That flaky pastry crust, that's where it's at. And guys, this makes a lot. We got cavities and diabetes for days. Oh, but it is worth it. And they're not as annoyingly sweet as any of your major name brands. Not saying that these aren't sweet, because they definitely are. They're very good. But there's a fresh element and a very... There's more flavor to these than there is sweetness. That apple's to die for. Honestly. You can slip a couple of these in there your next Thanksgiving or Christmas, and it will perfectly replace any conventional pie. This pie shell is magical. All right, JJ. Here's looking at you. This is the Boston cream, one of my favorites. And JJ's Pies are the only ones that I know of that makes this particular kind. I had one of these a couple days ago for research, or maybe I just wanted one. Anyhow, let's see how mine stacks up against the JJ's. No comparison. The JJ's are overly sweet, and they taste like preservatives. This has the real feel of what they were going for. Real custard cream, real rich, homemade, old-fashioned style chocolate pudding, and a crispy, flaky crust. Absolutely sweet without being overly much. Guys, get out there and try this. It was past time we did a dessert better than the box, and I hope I did it justice, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I'm about to fall into a diabetic coma. See you later.